Heads up, this podcast isn't therapy. It's bold, blunt, and irreverent, but it's not a substitute for professional help. Full disclaimer is in the blurb below.
Love versus loyalty. The grief of outgrowing someone you once chose. When loyalty becomes self-betrayal, when you grew and they didn't, now what? What happens when you still care but can't connect? When your values stretch like skin that no longer fits the body of your relationship? This episode is for the ones quietly grieving a love that no longer meets them, not because anyone did something wrong, but because growth wasn't shared. If you've ever stayed because it was safe, familiar, or for what we built together, this one's for you. In this episode, we'll walk through one of the most quietly devastating crossroads in a soul's journey, the place where love and loyalty collide, where the relationship still looks intact from the outside, but inside something has broken. Not from betrayal or violence, but from growth, real internal growth. We look at the difference between love, which is presence, connection, and aliveness, and loyalty, which often becomes time-served, duty, and fear of rocking the boat. We'll talk about what happens when one person expands and the other doesn't, and how that can quietly kill the relationship even while the house stays clean and the fridge stays full. So we'll name the grief no one talks about, the grief of dreaming alone, of missing someone who's still right beside you, and we'll go deep into the reasons people stay. The fear of being the villain, the sunk costs, the shame of giving up, especially for women, and you'll learn to spot the signs it's time to choose yourself, when you're shrinking, when you're regulating them, when you're fantasizing more about freedom than touch. And we'll reframe this not as failure, but as completion. A soul contract fulfilled, a story that served its purpose. And finally, I'll show you how to leave with grace if that's your choice. How to speak truth without cruelty, how to love without clinging, and how to exit the cage not with fire but with freedom. This one's for anyone who's loved well, grown deeply, and now stands on the edge of what comes next. When love becomes a cage, you didn't fall out of love, you just kept growing, and they didn't follow. There wasn't a fight, there wasn't an affair, there wasn't even a drama big enough to name. But the air between you shifted, subtly at first, like the change in seasons, the ones that only the trees can feel. Then more noticeably, conversation shortened, touch felt obligatory, laughter once the thread between you stopped coming uninvited. You still care. You may still make love sometimes, but it's not you anymore. Not the you fought so hard to become. You wake up beside them and wonder, when the intimacy turned into a kind of performance, when did presence become politeness? When did soul connection become roommate logistics? This is what we call a developmental rupture. It's a fork in the road that forms not from betrayal, but from asymmetrical growth. One of you began expanding emotionally, spiritually, psychologically, the other did not. And now you're living inside a ghost relationship, a relationship that still has structure but no real spirit. Two people sharing a life but no longer sharing and evolving together. You try to explain your needs gently, desperately, and it lands like static. They nod and they say, I hear you, but you don't feel heard. Because they're listening from who you were, not who you are now. You wonder if you're asking for too much. You gaslight yourself before they ever have to. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe I should be more grateful. Maybe this is what long-term love is supposed to feel like. But deep in your body, you know, this isn't love, it's maintenance. And you've become the caretaker of a story that no longer feeds you. When love becomes a cage, it doesn't always look like pain. Sometimes it looks like numbness, like silence, like a home full of photos where no one looks at each other anymore. It's a ghost relationship. This is the image I want to offer you here. A bed shared by two people who stop dreaming together. A house that's lived in but not inhabited. Perhaps it includes a wedding ring that no longer encircles love but encircles obligation. Or perhaps it's a different kind of commitment. This is not what your soul signed up for, and it's not your fault that you outgrew the love that once fit. Growth doesn't always come with applause. Sometimes it comes with silence, sometimes it comes with grief, and sometimes it whispers through the deepest truth of all. This no longer fits who I've become. Close your eyes for a moment if it's safe to do so and ask yourself, who am I when I'm not trying to make this work? What part of me has had to go silent to stay here? And if those answers bring tears, let them. They're sacred truths and they deserve to be heard. You didn't fall out of love. You grew beyond the space it had to offer. And now you're standing at the edge of what might be the bravest question you've ever asked. Do I stay out of loyalty to our history, or do I leave out of love for who I want to evolve into? Then comes the holding, the grief before the goodbye. It's very poignant. It's not just a person you're letting go of, it's a version of yourself you shared with them. This is a kind of grief that no one prepares you for. The grief of leaving someone who didn't hurt you, who tried, who maybe still loves you deeply, and yet you lie in bed beside them and feel like you're disappearing. This isn't rage or betrayal or cruelty. This is something more haunting. The ache of knowing this used to fit, this used to be comfortable, this used to be home, and now it's not. You're not just grieving them, you're grieving yourself. The you who once laughed here, who once felt chosen, who once believed this love was the destination. You remember the kitchen where you may have danced together, the different holidays where they looked at you like you were born in the stars, the different nicknames they gave you, the smell of their hoodie. You grieve the rituals, the little holy things that made life together feel like magic. The coffee they left on your bedside table, the Sunday shop together, the pet names, the fights that ended with giggles, forgiveness, and perhaps making love. But now, those things feel like relics from a former life. You walk through the shared spaces and feel like a ghost in your own story. I should be grateful, you whisper. They're not cruel, they're not toxic, and they're trying. And it's true, they are. But trying isn't the same as transforming. Effort is not evolution. And some part of you, the wild part, the wise part, the holy part, has started to starve. It longs to be met, to be felt in your fullness, to stop translating your needs into bite-sized pieces someone else can swallow and tolerate, to stop apologizing for your depth, your clarity, your becoming. This is what makes grief so incredibly complex. There's no clear villain, only the unbearable truth that love alone is no longer enough. And so you hold it all, the memories, the guilt, the longing, the fear of starting again, and the unbearable tenderness of it all. Take a few deep breaths and just connect to your heart and ask yourself, is my soul being nourished here, or only my fears being soothed? And let that question settle, let it echo, because there's a kind of love that feels safe but keeps you small, and there's a kind of grief that arrives not to punish you but to wake you up. It's not just a person you're letting go of, it's a version of yourself you shared with them. And maybe it's time to meet the version of you that's waiting beyond this, the one you silenced to keep the peace, the one who stopped dreaming to avoid rocking the boat, the one who knows, deep in the marrow of your bones, I cannot keep abandoning myself in the name of not abandoning you. This grief is sacred. It is the ashes from which truth truly rises. Let yourself feel it fully. Only then will you know if the next step is to stay or to go. Then you'll finally come to a reckoning. Will you choose yourself? Some call it selfish, but the soul calls it necessary. There comes a moment, quiet at first, when the ache of staying becomes louder than the fear of leaving. That moment, that's not rebellion, that's resurrection. You've played every role they've ever needed. Wife, husband, mother, father, partner, lover, peacemaker. You've shape-shifted to survive. You've swallowed your longing and told yourself it was maturity. You've made excuses. He's just tired. She means well. We're just in a rough patch. But patches don't last a decade. You're now standing in the furnace of truth, and it's burning everything false to the ground. Let's talk about the wound of over-loyalty, the myth that says your goodness is measured by how much of yourself you're willing to sacrifice. You were taught to stay, to be understanding, to hold the family together, and to be the steady one. But no one taught you how to hold yourself. No one said you matter too. And if you stay just to keep the peace, that's not love. That's self-abandonment with very good PR. And yes, everyone's scared. Scared of the fallout, of the label, of becoming the one who left. But underneath that terror is the real fear. Who will I be without this story? The story that says I'm the one who stayed. The one who's so patient, so strong, so committed. And sometimes commitment is just a slow death in soft lighting. And yes, there are threads that tug at your heart, a house you made a home, a life, a community that says nothing but watches everything. And sometimes there are children. You can't just walk away from that, they'll say, but maybe the real betrayal is walking away from yourself. Because you're not leaving the memories, you're not leaving the love, you're just refusing to make yourself small to be palatable anymore. Sometimes it's about saying, I'm not betraying you, I'm honoring me. And I'll say that one more time. I'm not betraying you, I'm honoring me. So close your eyes and just picture your old self, the one who stayed, shrank, softened the truth, the one who kept trying to translate their soul into a language someone else could understand. See yourself wrapped in layers, old skin, old stories, old silence. See yourself walk into the fire. And let the fire take what was never yours to carry. Let it burn the fear, the guilt, and the shoulds. And from those ashes, see yourself rise, naked, new, and free. Not cruel, not hard, just whole. And the cage you left behind was never a nest. It was a burial ground. And some may call you selfish, but your soul calls it necessary. You came here to evolve, not to babysit someone else's unwillingness to grow. And the reckoning is this: I'm not here to be good, I'm here to be true. So if it's your choice and you've often wondered how to leave with love, the most radical thing you can do is leave without hate. To leave without arguing and to leave on a very even keel. Peacefully, congenially, amiably. So here you are, you've faced the silence, you've grieved the ghost, and you've stood in the fire of your own evolution, and now there's one thing left to do. You've decided that you do have to leave, not just the person, but the version of yourself that kept choosing less. It doesn't have to be an angry exit. There doesn't have to be a dramatic slam of doors or social media fireworks. This isn't the burn it all down breakup your friends might have gone through themselves. This is something quieter, cleaner, rarer. This is leaving with love and leaving with respect. You can still say, I love you, I always will. Thank you for who you've been to me. But you can also say, I'm different now. I want things you don't want. Staying would cost me something I'm no longer willing to pay. You're allowed to tell the truth without making them the villain, and you're allowed to walk away without needing to win. They're allowed to have their grief, and they're allowed to have their version of the story. For them, it might feel sudden or cruel or selfish. You can't control that. That's their heartbreak to carry, not your burden to soften. You don't need to manage their emotions on your way out. That was part of the pattern that ends now. So when you leave in love, you've already left in truth. You leave in grace when you no longer need to justify your expansion. You leave with dignity when you trust that your soul knows more than your guilt ever could. And if it's your choice, may you go, not in shame, but in sovereignty. May you walk out of that story, not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving you. And may your leaving become someone else's permission slip. Because somewhere, someone is watching you choose yourself, and they've been waiting for a sign. Let your freedom become their invitation. So if you're standing at that edge, and breath catches in your chest, and deep down inside, for years you've been knowing it's time, but you've been terrified of the fallout, I want you to hear this. You're not wrong, you're not heartless. You're answering the oldest prayer of your soul, to belong fully to yourself. And when you do, when you walk towards your own evolution, you won't just survive, you'll rise. Some people only know how to love who you used to be, but your soul didn't come here to stay small for someone else's comfort. You don't have to hate them to outgrow them. You just have to love yourself enough to answer the next calling. And love always asks, who are you becoming? Loyalty always asks, who were you before? One will free you, the other will bury you. We have to choose wisely in this life. If this is somehow an issue that's going on for you right now, you can journal with these prompts. What part of me am I abandoning by staying? What version of me did this relationship once serve? And if I met this person now, would I choose them again? If there are children involved, ask yourself, what am I modeling to my children about love? And then you can begin the sentence, the cost of staying is, and then the gift of leaving might be. A visualization you might use can be picturing yourself standing in strength, any way that feels right for you, while you recite the mantra, I honor the love that was, I release the loyalty that binds me in fear, I walk forward with love but also with truth. So thank you for walking with me through this one. If it stirred something in you, grief, clarity, rage, relief, know that it means your soul is paying attention. You are not made to live half-loved. You are not made to stay where your spirit goes quiet. If this episode resonated, share it with someone who might need it. And if you're ready to reclaim your truth, your voice, and your life, stay with me. This is Soul Path Alchemy. I'm Annie O'Brien. Thank you for listening. The material in this episode is for psychoeducational and reflective purposes only. It does not constitute clinical advice, diagnosis, or a recommendation to leave your relationship. Only you know your truth as you are the expert in your own life. This podcast exists to help you meet your own truth with honesty, courage, and care. It's for entertainment and reflective purposes only. If you're in crisis or navigating significant decisions, please speak with a trusted mental health professional. Every relationship is unique, every soul path sacred, and you're the expert in your own life.